Welcome back then to RWR Plays TEW 2020, our WCW save from 2001, and we have another episode of Nitro to do today. First of all though, a little look back and recap of what happened on Nitro the previous week. The main thing coming out of that was that Mike Awesome became the US champion, defeated Diamond Dallas Page with the help of Lance Storm. There was some question as to whether Lance Storm was going to help or hinder Mike Awesome following Awesome beating Storm in the semi-final of the tournament for the US title, but instead Lance Storm came out and super kicked DDP to help Mike Awesome win the match and take the US title. In addition to that, we had Shane Douglas bragging about his win over Bill Goldberg, and Goldberg coming out to take on Shane Douglas and his new partners in Chronic. They ran off though and denying Goldberg any revenge. We also said that we also saw Booker T say that he'll join Sting at War Games. So they're together now. Booker T becomes the first teammate of Sting to face the Magnificent Seven at that War Games match at the Great American Bash. So today we are going to do another episode of Nitro. We announced a couple of matches ahead of time. First of all, the main event of this week's episode will be Booker T and Sting taking on the Steiner Brothers. A little bit of a preview of that War Games confrontation. We've also know that Goldberg's going to be in action and Tommy Dreamer is going to be making his debut. Okay, so we're in the Reading Civic Auditorium in California for this show, in front of 1,851 fans. That's pretty decent. Couple of dark matches, couple of pre-show matches to start with. We've got Ice Train and Ernest Miller against James Storm and Chris Harris. In the first of those, Ice Train and Ernest Miller get the victory in 6:21 when Ernest Miller pinned James Storm. This was really to see whether or not Ernest Miller and Ice Train have got any kind of chemistry. Doesn't look like they have good chemistry, but also doesn't look like they have bad chemistry teaming together. So they might become a little bit of a sort of, I don't know, lower level tag team that we're going to use going forward. I don't have any big plans for Ice Train and Ernest Miller, so it seems like another good place for them to be. Anyway, segment rating of 38. Ernest Miller looked pretty good. Everyone else not so great. Then we also had another dark match, Bobby Eaton versus Lance Storm, segment rating of 61. Lance Storm was 67, Bobby Eaton 41, 11 minutes 12 seconds victory for Lance Storm by submission. To be honest, this was just about having a bit of fun, putting Bobby Eaton against Lance Storm. I guess we may have recorded it for posterity so that in the future, if anyone wanted to see Bobby Eaton versus Lance Storm, they could do. But yeah, this was on before the show started. So the show begins properly and we go straight into a match with Bill Goldberg versus The Wall. And Bill Goldberg wins in 5:22 by pinfall. Segment rating 52. Bill Goldberg, ring performance of 79. The Wall 26. Not enough selling shown, and The Wall's really off his game, but still Goldberg obviously very, very good and gets another victory here as we continue to build Goldberg back up following his loss to Shane Douglas at the Big Bang. After the match, Shane Douglas comes out to the stage, and along with Brian Clark and Brian Adams, he says that he's nothing to prove against Goldberg after easily beating him at Big Bang, and that's why he and Chronic decided to leave the ring when Goldberg came out to face them last week. He says, however, that he is willing to offer Goldberg a match at the Great American Bash, a 6-man tag match against all three of what he is calling the franchise players, that being Shane Douglas, Brian Clark, and Brian Adams. He says that Goldberg just needs to do one thing, and that's find two partners to go to team with him, and the match can be made official. They then leave and Goldberg chases after them, but by that point they've already left the stage. Up next, it's a women's match. It's Alexis Laree versus Jillian Hall. And in an abysmal match, Laree defeated Jillian Hall in 5:31 by submission, a segment rating of 17. Now, during this match, the commentators explained that this is the first match of many in an 8-women round robin to crown the first WCW Women's Champion. They say that there will be one match each week as further competitors in the round robin are revealed. Now, obviously not a very good match, and this is the reason why I'm kind of introducing the women's division in a really kind of very slow way, because first of all, WCW doesn't have a women's division. Also, there isn't a huge amount of experienced wrestlers out there that I can just put into really important matches. So I figured, let's just give them as much experience as possible, and it cost us very little because we're going to put them in short matches short TV matches for weeks and weeks and weeks, build up their popularity, build up some experience, and then, hopefully we can build a proper division out of it. So this is just a very sort of us dipping our toes in the water of a women's division very, very early on. Alexis Lurie is, of course, Mickie James, and Gillian Hall is Gillian Hall. They, as you can see there, Alexis Lurie was pretty good, 21. Not so good for Gillian Hall. She's obviously much less experienced, or at least much less talented than Alexis Lurie. But there we go. Segment rating of 17, not the best, but that's fine. The women's title round robin has begun. Next up, Tony Schiavone interviews the Steiner Brothers backstage, and pretty much all they do is hype their match later on with Sting and Booker T. They say that tonight will be a preview of what will happen at War Games in 4 weeks' time. Segment rating of 59. Tony Schiavone wasn't particularly good. Steiner, though, was fantastic. Rick Steiner struggled when going off script. Next up, 3 Count versus Lash LaRue and Jason Jett. And in a poor match, 3 Count defeated Lash LaRue and Jason Jett in 8:22 when Evan Courageous pinned Lash LaRue with a countdown. Segment rating of 44. Shannon Moore was pretty good. Evan Courageous not bad either. Jason Jett and Lash LaRue were okay. The announcers explained that this is part of a 4-team mini tournament to determine the new #1 contenders for the Cruiserweight Tag Team titles. They also explained that next week, Elix Skipper and Kid Romeo will face Air Raid in the second semi-final, winners of which will face 3 Count. Next up, Diamond Dallas Page comes out for an interview with Tony Schiavone, and Tony Schiavone asks him for his reaction to his loss last week. DDP says that he doesn't mind losing, but it's hard to take when the guy's buddy helps him win. Team Canada then come out to confront DDP, but just as they are looking likely to attack, Kevin Nash comes to the ring and evens the odds, a surprise return for Kevin Nash. Team Canada then back away rather than confront physically DDP and Kevin Nash. Segment rating of 55, Tony Schiavone underperformed. DDP came out of this looking excellent, but Lance Storm was underwhelming. Kevin Nash looked good. So yeah, not too bad. I was hoping for a little bit better than that, but segment rating of 55, and that continues the Team Canada storyline that we've got going on at the moment. Next up, Mike Sanders against Kaz Hayashi, and Kaz Hayashi defeats Mike Sanders in 7:01. Segment rating of 49. Kaz Hayashi pretty damn good. Sanders not so good. This was really just a way to get them on the card and fill some time. Next up, Hugh Morris comes to the ring, angry and with purpose, and he grabs a microphone and he calls for Vampiro to come to the ring and explain to him what he was doing last week to help him cost his match. He says, failing that, a good old-fashioned fight will do. Instead, however, of Vampiro coming to the ring, a video shows on the big monitor, and it features the many monikers of Hugh Morris and all the things that he's done in the past in terms of his various different characters and personas. It also shows him losing matches where he's not been able to get the job done. The final moments of the video are simply the words, "Know yourself," as the screen fades to black. Next up, Tommy Dreamer makes his debut in WCW and gets a victory over Johnny Swinger in 6:32 by pinfall. This one got a segment rating of 44. Tommy Dreamer not a bad in-ring performance of 47. Johnny Swinger only 23, but just a sort of introductory victory for Tommy Dreamer as he comes into the company. Then we have Mike Tenay and Jerry Lawler hyping up next week's show. Mike Tenay announces that he's just received word that next week's main event will see Team Canada take on the team of the Insiders, DDP and Kevin Nash, in Kevin Nash's return match to WCW. Also next week, a 4-way match to determine the #1 contenders to Totally Buff's tag team titles will take place. We'll have Elix Skipper and Kid Romeo versus Air Raid in the second semi-final of the Cruiserweight Tag Team Title #1 Contenders Tournament. Also, can Goldberg find himself partners to face the franchise players? And also, a revered international star is set to make their debut in WCW. All of that to come next week on Nitro. Then we have Curt Hennig versus Buff Bagwell, segment rating of 50. Buff Bagwell defeats Curt Hennig following interference from Lex Luger after 11:46. Perhaps not as good as I would like, but again, this is about, I can't remember if I said this on the last video, but I have made a mistake with Curt Hennig's settings, and he's a heel in the game. We're going to pretend that he's a babyface, but the game thinks he's a heel, and therefore that's why the segment rating isn't particularly good, because it's got a heel-heel dynamic, which is strange for the game and for the settings of WCW. So yeah, that's just a mistake on my part. But anyway, decent performances from both. Bagwell gets the victory over Curt Hennig. As Curt Hennig gets backstage, he is approached by Tony Schiavone for an instant reaction to what just took place. However, Ric Flair appears in the background and he laughs at Curt Hennig for a second loss on his return to WCW. Hennig goes to run after Ric Flair, but officials and security quickly intervene. Flair continues to goad Hennig as those officials hold Curt Hennig back, and eventually the officials and security move him away from the area. Segment rating of 61, a good performance from everybody really involved, apart from Tony Schiavone. But Flair fantastic in this one, and Curt Hennig and Ric Flair's story continues. Then it is time for the main event: Steiner Brothers versus Booker T and Sting. And the Steiner Brothers win in 21:40 when Sting is counted out after being attacked by Jeff Jarrett on the outside. Segment rating of 79, Rick Steiner a in-ring performance of 70, Scott Steiner 87, Sting 78, and Booker T 69. A really good match there. Segment rating of 79. That's a very good rating for the main event. I'm pretty happy with that. After the match, Booker T and Sting are set upon by the whole of the Magnificent Seven, and they beat them down at the end of the show. The Magnificent Seven hold their arms aloft in victory as the show goes off the air. Segment rating of 73 to end things off. Road Warrior Animal performed poorly, but everybody else is pretty decent. And yeah, a very good end to the show here in terms of the quality of the segments. So that is the latest episode of Monday Nitro as we make our way to the Great American Bash. We've still got 3 weeks of Nitro actually before the next pay-per-view. But you can see here overall rating of 70, so once again really pleased with the overall quality of the show, and it's increased our popularity, which is really, really important as we want to build the company. Steiner Brothers defeating Booker T and Sting by countout is the match of the night. We've launched the women's round robin, which will last for a very long time, I think. We've launched the Cruiserweight #1 contender tag team title tournament, which will only last for a couple of weeks. Tommy Dreamer's made his debut, and we have progressed the Curt Hennig and Flair feud, the Goldberg and Shane Douglas feud, and the Team Canada versus Insiders feud that is currently underway. So that's the show. I think another decent show. The difficulty here, I've got this issue where I don't want the pay-per-views to all be in week 1 of the schedule of each month. So for example, because I'm a bit strange like this, I like things to be as realistic as possible, and Halloween Havoc, for example, has to happen when we get to October. It has to happen at the end of the month, but I don't want to be in a position where I've got 6, 7, 8 weeks of booking to do between one pay-per-view and the next. So what I'm trying to do is realign everything to the end of the month. But because we had the Big Bang pay-per-view and it happened in the first week of May, I've got to slowly get there. So this month there's 5 episodes of Nitro between the Big Bang and the Great American Bash, and over the course of the year we'll be shifting the pay-per-views so that they are slowly later in the month, so that when I've gone past Halloween Havoc I can then make it so that every pay-per-view is on the 4th week of the month. Just a bit of extra information there about what is happening and why there's so many weeks between the 2 pay-per-views. It looks like, I mean, look at the news here. You can see Raw apparently, yeah, look, they're moving to Channel 4. So Raw is going to be shown on Channel 4 in the UK, which is pretty cool. But you can see here all of their shows are expanding or getting new slots. So it looks like WWF are just continuing to grow and grow and grow, and they've signed loads and loads of people, as I said previously. They've just recently signed Hulk Hogan. They are properly expanding. They are massive at this point in time, and I think that's pretty realistic in fairness, because WWF were really, really big at this time in history, even when WCW was still running. They were massive and they were so far ahead of WCW it was untrue. So even though we are still kind of running head to head with them on a Monday night, you know, they have no problem with us. You know, our shows are getting really good feedback, so that's really good. You know, we're fine, but we are not in any way competing with WWF at the moment. And obviously we might be in a better place if we weren't up against up against Raw on a Monday night. But ultimately that's just the conditions that we find ourselves in. And maybe, you know, maybe I'll climb down from, you know, having a show on Monday nights, because this isn't really, I'm not doing this really to compete with WWF or try, you know, the purpose of this game is not to reopen the Monday Night War really. It's more about just doing, you know, booking WCW for the time beyond it actually closed in real life. So maybe one thing we can do is move WCW Nitro in the schedule, which might help us get a few more eyes on the product. Anyway, that is episode 5? Yes, episode 5 of this series. I'll be back obviously soon with episode 6, which will be another episode of Nitro. We've got the main event there, which is the Insiders against Team Canada. We've also got some other things that are going on. We've got as we just said, Elite Skipper and Kid Romeo versus Air Raid, and a 4-way match to determine the number 1 contenders to the WCW Tag Team titles. We also, I think Goldberg will be in action, and we've got a debut of an international star. Not sure it's not quite the star I was hoping for, but it's still a revered international star. And yeah, if you like this video, give us a like. Obviously subscribe if you want to continue to follow along, and thank you for joining me today.